Okay, welcome to Expert Resources here at the Compelling Communicator. So today I have with me Teri Kingston. Now, Teri is one of Canada's top 10 speaking coaches, an author, TEDx speaker, and the founder of Real Impact Speaking. She specializes in coaching executives, thought leaders and passionate individuals to deliver impactful messages, including on prestigious stages like TEDx. Teri's own TEDx talk, Can We Live Better by Talking About Dying, gained over 40,000 views within the first 24 hours. Damn, that's pretty good. Driven by a mission to amplify valuable perspectives, Teri believes in connecting deeply with every audience. Based in beautiful St. Andrews by the Sea, she treasures family time and, of course, chocolate. So, welcome along, Teri. How are you going?
Thank you. I should have said St. Andrews by the Sea in New Brunswick, Canada, because your community is on the other side of the world. And
Yeah,
yes, I
well,
do love
we
chocolate.
are all over the world at the moment, but yeah, probably half is in New Zealand. So yeah.
Hmm.
And
Great.
what's the weather like over there at the moment? Because you're coming out of summer, would that be right?
No, we're coming out of winter.
Coming out of
And
winter.
we're in spring now. Yeah, spring has started. It's been very Atlantic, Fundy, the Fundy Shore coastline can get very foggy, very misty, and that's what I'm looking at today. It's like it's very Irish, I call it, because you go out and you can feel the moisture on your face and everything. It's quite lovely if you like mist and
Yeah,
doom
no.
and gloom.
And who doesn't? Who doesn't? Okay, so what we're going to talk about today. So as mentioned in the introduction, Teri and I do a lot of the same stuff, but Teri does something that I don't do, and that's what I want to focus in on today. Is Teri helps people to apply for a TEDx. Now, I have given advice on this before, just from the point of view of I used to do the selection for TEDx Ruakura. Did the selection for TEDx Ruakura for, I think, around 8 years. So you gain some insight from doing
Mm.
that. But I have never sort of pursued helping other people to do that. I don't think it's not my gift. So I'm like, but I'll leave that to somebody else. So when I have somebody that wants to really get some help with applying, Teri's the person I send them to. So thank you for coming along to offer this bit of expertise. And I guess let's start somewhere simple. What's the most common mistake you see with people who, haven't got a TEDx talk and they're trying to apply?
Mm. Mm. There's a list of common mistakes.
Okay.
Okay. And I tell people it is so much easier, and you probably saw this when you were on the selection committee, so much easier to have your carefully crafted application just slip off the side and go in the no pile because they're not hitting certain markers that busy selection committees are looking for. So I too was on two selection committees for TEDx Ottawa and TEDx Canada, which is near Ottawa, for 5 years, and read a ton of applications. And it really did break my heart to see people miss, some really good speakers, people I knew in the community that I knew wanted to get on a stage. But when we're going through the intake form that most, it's usually a Google form or something on most websites now. When we're going through that, it comes to us in a spreadsheet with columns. The names are blocked out. We don't see who they are. And then we get to can you tell us, your idea in under 10 words? And a lot of them can't. They're not clear about what their idea is. They know they want a TEDx stage, but they don't know what the audience is going to receive from them being. And that's what the committees I was on were looking for more than anything. What will my audience gain from having you take up space on my red carpet in front of our community? What will you leave them with? And many of them just couldn't answer that question in a way that stood out or in a way that didn't sound like they were using a cut and paste, personal resume, or, oh, I've done this talk on dozens of stages. I'm a professional speaker. Therefore, you should have me on your stage because I'm really good. And we're
Yeah.
saying, unless you can give me a really good idea,
Yeah.
it's you're just not going to get your yes. So not being clear on what the idea is, what the transformation is for the audience, what the value is for my TEDx audience from you getting a yes for my stage, that's the easiest way to land in the no pile.
I love that too. The way you said, what is it that you can do for the audience on my stage? Because
Yeah.
that is exactly the mentality when you're an organizer or when you're in that selection committee. Because speaking from my experience with TEDx Ruakura, and we were very much more focused on the live event, to be fair, than the video. That was just our ethos. That's just how we sort of built up. But it was all about this stage has to work. We have to have the people in our community come along and have an amazing event. And so that was a big part of it. And also, I do want to acknowledge that there were a lot of people we had to turn down, not because their application was bad, but because we can't have 4 people talk about the same thing. And,
Exactly.
3 of you look great and we've got to pick one of you because we can't
Yes.
pick 3 of you,
Yeah.
and that can come down to the most, that choice between the 3 can come down to the most insignificant thing, really.
Exactly.
And it could be as simple as, oh, well, I guess we've got more guys than girls, so we'll take the girl out of those 3 or whatever. So, yeah.
So to go back to your original question, what makes it difficult is a lot of people don't understand the inner world of a TEDx event. Okay, that's why I call myself an English to TED translator, because it's really understanding what a TEDx selection committee is looking for, and that it is a mix. They're curating a day-long event sometimes. They need that mix of, they're mandated by Big Ted, Papa Ted, to have a mix of talks within an event. And so you could have the best talk ever, you could have a brilliant application, and it still wouldn't get a yes for that event that year because of all the things you've talked about. So sometimes we just have to say, and I've had to say this to people, we used to send out letters for Canada or Ottawa that would say, it's actually not personal. This just didn't fit this year. Someone else spoke on it last year. We're looking for this mix. Apply again. And so that's the nature of the beast.
There was definitely some people we organised apply again. And we had I don't know if you came across this, we did the salons. Did you get the salon license?
Yeah.
So sometimes we'd say, hey, look, we can't give you a full speaking thing. We'll put you on a salon, which we did as this was on stage, a questioning, an interview type thing. Because what we felt it wasn't fair to do a salon and make them do a talk with sort of a shorter run-up time. So we did it interview styles. Usually I was on stage interviewing them. And those ones that we interviewed, when they worked well, they were top of the list really to get in the next year's event. So that was cool. All right, so with the idea, I'm going to take this back a step actually. When do you think people should start the application process? I tend to be of the idea that there's no problem with getting your talk together. Well, not the 100% necessarily, but starting work on your talk before you start applying. If you have a clear passion that you want it, I want to talk about this is what I want to talk about, you can start working on that talk and even polishing that talk before you apply. But if you're a little I'm not sure what I want to talk about, this is my topic, but I don't know what the angle should be, do you feel like you should be looking at TEDx events first and then dialing down on that a little bit more afterwards? How do
I
you
look
feel
at it
about
a little bit more straightforwardly from a pure application process, in that you can't fill out an application unless you know what your idea is. But part of what I do when I'm helping people with the application coaching package is help them find that idea. And sometimes the initial conversation, which is a 30-minute discovery chat, nobody pays for that, but I can sort of suss out if they're close to an idea. But first session that we have is we're really looking at, okay, what is your TED worthy, what's your TED caliber idea? You do not, in my opinion, have to have a full talk written,
no?
because sometimes the full talks don't match the TED format, or they don't match the newer way of thinking around TED, this ideas change everything instead of just ideas worth spreading. That puts a whole different thing on that's based on what change do you want the audience to experience? I start with that question to help them get into the idea that supports that change. The transformation for the audience
Transformation.
comes first. And then all that goes into, so I'm going to talk about the book, because in the book, Get Ready for TED When TED is Ready for You, the reason I wrote it is an application handbook. And so it goes through a lot of this, what you're looking for in different applications, and how to perfect your pitch. But I have a template in there I call the trust template. And it's literally what I put all my speakers through. And even the ones that already have their yes, we do this anyway because it helps them later on when organizers need details. And so I'm asking people in under 10 words, what's the tough, relevant, urgent, specific, and tangible problem that their proposed talk? So that's where trust comes from. So what are they trying to address with their talk? Fewer than 100 words, and I do word count deliberately because a lot of applications have word counts. Some of
Yep.
them will go on for pages if you let them. And I have to
Oh
say,
yeah.
no, you have to be able to explain it so clearly. Fewer than 100 words, what is the problem? Fewer than 50 words, what's your idea that will solve the problem? And then what makes your idea novel and innovative? What is your call to action? And in fewer than 6 words, what's a tentative talk title? And fewer than 50 words or less, what makes you a content expert? So why you, why now, why this stage? It's all covered under that. But using a template that just helps them, I call it, this is going to sound horrible, pinning butterflies to a cork board. Because like I know it's a gross image, but it works because I had one lady I was chatting with this morning, ideas all over the place. It could be this, it could be this, and I'm saying, okay, so each one of those ideas is a butterfly, and you have to kind of put it on a cork board behind you, or put it on a big flip chart. That's one part, and then you have to look at that idea and and you do this when you're coaching as well, find the supporting story, fact, joke, humor that's going to illuminate that idea for an audience. When you're doing it in an application, you really just need to show, like, what is your idea worth spreading, or what is your idea that changes everything, in fewer than whatever word count they give you in the form. And then tell me why. As a selection committee member, we wanted to know why you. A lot of people talk about death and dying, or a lot of people talk about mental health. A lot of people talk about a lot of things. But why are you the subject matter expert that I'm going to give one of my little valued stage pieces of real estate, like maybe 7 or 8 speakers, and you may get over 100, 200 applications.
Yep.
So what are you going to tell me I'll turn your paper over and say, oh, we got to have Chris. Like, other people, and we used to do this around the table. We would have a short list, and then each one of the coaches and the rest of the selection committee, sometimes we had to fight for the person we wanted to see on the stage.
Been there, done that. Yep.
It all came down to, well, why him? What is it about Chris that makes him so much better than Mary, who someone else wanted, And
Yep.
I had to be able to defend that based on how you stood out in your application.
Yeah, and that's a great point, going back to what we said before, because sometimes that argument ended up being solved not by Chris or Mary at all, but by the rest of the speakers we'd already selected, and like, okay, well, which one's going to fit in best with who we've already selected? And it may be, again, just a gender thing, which you can't control, or it may be just that, oh, we've got actually three heavy, more heavy talks than light talks. Chris's is heavy, Mary's is light. Let's go with the lighter one.
Yeah.
As simple
It's
as
a
that.
blend, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and I say that, and I want to point that out because when you start applying for these, you put a lot of work into them, and you will get some rejections. I mean, if you get no rejection the first one, you go, more power to you. That's fantastic. But the chances are you're going to get some rejections, and you don't want to be discouraged by those rejections because it's not a rejection of you. It's a rejection of your topic at this time, usually. Particularly if you had some coaching getting to that point. The one thing that, and the reason I say that is all of us have blind spots where we're concerned. We carry our assumptions with us. And so there are people that have done applications, and I've gone back to them going, dude, what was with that application? You did this and this, or you didn't do this and this. And they just weren't even aware. And I was like, okay, you've got time. Go redo your application, put it back in, or whatever. And that was particularly noticeable if I knew them, because I knew what they were really like. But most of the 250 applications we'd get in a year, I didn't know who they were. So I get what I read, and that's what all the selection committees get.
And it's very different as a speaker to applying to speak at a conference or workshop for a professional organization or an association. And a lot of people that apply to TEDx events have done that many, many times. And they think the TEDx application is the same thing. It's not. We're not looking for the same things that a conference organizer is looking for, or an association that wants to book speakers for this event or that event. And this is why I say that English to TED, that knowledge of the inner world of TED, which you have and I have, I call myself a triple threat because I've been coaching TEDx since 2015. I've done my own TEDx talk, which, as you read out earlier, and it was one of the top 10 viewed in the month after it came out, which I'm still pretty proud of.
Oh, yeah.
But more than that, over 1,000 people have liked it. So not only did 55,000 people watch it, but more than 1,000 have clicked like on the YouTube link for that. And it's on TED.com as well, which again is just another, So I know from the inside what it's like to step in that red dot. I know from the coaching perspective, but I also know from sitting on a committee for all those years and, watching people's applications slip off the desk. And so that's why when it came time to write a book, I actually didn't even want to write this book. It was, I joined a book launching company just as they were getting started. I was part of their beta group. And they said, well, what are you doing on a daily basis that would be interesting in a book? And I had wanted to write about teaching managers to deal with grief and all the other stuff that I do in my speaking. And then I told them about this 2-hour workshop I've been doing for quite some time called Get Ready for TED. And in that Get Ready for TED, it was like a PowerPoint presentation that I've used for years. And people would sit there, a group of them, 6 or 8 people at once, and we'd go through the basics, through the trust template and all of that. And then they'd apply. And 7 out of 10 of them would get accepted the first time. And
That's
so
great.
that's when the publisher said, whatever you're saying day after day, that's your table of contents. And then she said, and then you've got a book. And so it wasn't easy. There's parts of this that were much easier to do in a workshop
So if
than
you're
write
watching,
down in the frickin' book.
if you're watching this, that link will be below in the below the video. So there will be a link to that.
Yeah, and it is sold on Amazon. I know it's not as easy to get stuff through Amazon, but
we'll put an Amazon link because everybody around the world can do that. And I like to read everything on Kindle because it's shipping books to New Zealand is difficult.
Well, it is available on Kindle. It's available on Audible, but I prefer to read than to have someone read something to me. But it's really just a handy handbook. Like it's not fancy literature or anything. There's some of the story about how I got to be a coach, but there's also a fair bit of thinking went into what does a reader need so they can cut through all the noise and come up with a decent application. The hard part is showing them how to find events that are open to speakers, and that's still the most challenging part. Even though TEDxevents.com has that big spreadsheet where you can go in and look through all the events coming up, but half of them, the links don't work. Most of them, unless you're looking 4 to 6 months out, they've already filled their stages. And so some of it is understanding the TED cycle of application windows, when they're open, how quickly they close. And I'll just say as a little aside, the reason as event coordinators, the reason we only open windows for 2 or 3 weeks sometimes, because it limits the amount of applications we get.
Yeah, it takes so much time to go through applications. Like, people don't appreciate how much work is involved in just that selection piece.
It's really tough. And you got to know where to look, otherwise you can waste hours. I say start close to home. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's cool. Another thing, it just occurred to me, a lot of people don't realize, and they must realize because it's really important, is it's a voluntary organization. All these TEDx independently organized events. You're not getting paid as a TEDx speaker. I think you should know that. But if you don't, I don't want that to be a surprise. You're not getting paid. Nobody's getting paid. I used to joke, the only people getting paid are the caterers and the venue. They were the only ones we had to pay every.
The cash bar.
The cash bar.
It's true.
Yeah. So that changes the dynamic a bit, because if you can't be a little bit rude, well, you shouldn't be anyway, to anybody that you're working, trying to get selected with. But I've seen people try to pull their status with one of these selections, and it's like, these guys are voluntary. They may not be here next month. They've got nothing to lose, and they'll tell you what they think. And besides, I don't want anybody speaking on my stage that plays those sorts of games with the people we have on board, our volunteers. So anyway, that's just really important to realize that it is voluntary. So that means that sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get answers, and things like that. And it also means that your experience, if you're applying to half a dozen different TEDx events, is your experience will be different, because you've got different volunteers using slightly different systems and slightly different criteria everywhere. So in the Compelling Communicators, in the TEDx Speakers Bootcamp, I've got a link. There's one of the lessons is rules, and there's links to all the rules in the TEDx site. And you should absolutely be aware of those before you start applying, because those are the rules that come from TED. So all the TEDx's will agree on that. But a lot of the local ones, or the individual TEDx organizations, will have their own criteria on top of that. So, for example, we wanted one of ours with TEDx Ruakura, probably from the second year, we decided we wanted just to showcase the region. So it was Waikato. So we'd get people applying from all over the country, but we've made it very clear on our application form. We're trying to showcase people in this region. That's our what we want to do. So if you're not in this region, don't apply, because we're not going to put you in.
That's so true. And I always look when I'm going through, especially if I'm, if a client signs on for the application package and they want me to help them find a stage, which I do as part of the process. Can't guarantee I'll find it, but I'll work really hard to find one that works for them. And they will look at the applications, and some of them will say local only, or some will say, local, and we might Some of them have that closed tight window. There's one TEDx Atlanta that's open right now that has a rolling application. So you can actually apply at any time during the year. But if something really pops up to them that will match the lineup they're looking at for November, then they'll reach back. A lot of places, especially with the closed window, won't even tell you if you haven't been accepted because they're simply getting too many now. We used to send out letters from Ottawa and Canada saying, so sorry, and please don't take this personally or whatever. We had a nice little short form that went out. So at least they knew. But the others, you're just waiting to see the lineup of speakers that they have chosen and then realizing if you haven't heard from them by the time they said they would,
Yeah.
and then you see the speakers and you're going, hey, I know I'm better than that person, or my talk's going to be better than that idea. They see the title and they're all, again, it's not personal. It's the event being curated as a whole
Yeah.
that can do that. But it's still, I've been turned down. I think I was turned down 4 or 5 times before I found the one that worked for me. And it was a question of my theme, my idea matching their theme so beautifully. And then
Yeah.
having failed on a number of applications, knowing what to put in this one, they
Yeah.
didn't need a video, which was good. Because I was actually moving from Ontario into New Brunswick the day I saw the application, waiting for the moving truck to show up. And I thought, well, this sounds interesting. It was called The Essence of Humanity was their theme. I talk about end of life and death and dying. Well, that's a big part of the essence of humanity. So it was a beautiful fit
Yep.
for me. I had my get ready. So I was ready when the window came open with my idea well articulated, being able to say it very, very clearly. And I even remember when I got the note back saying, yes, we'd really like you on our stage. And I wrote to the organizer at the time. It was a university, so it's a university team that's doing it, which can be dicey, but they were pretty good. But she said, we knew you knew what you were doing. She said, we knew from your application that you understood the TED stage. You understood what the event was all about, that your speech is, yes, wonderful, you need this, and it needs to be able to blend in. And she said, we got that from your application. That's the magic of knowing what needs to go in so that they can see you're not going to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
Or do you,
absolutely.
You've got to be able to show you can play with the team, that you're bringing something valuable to their event as one speaker on a full day. And so it's an interesting, that's why I call it the journey to TED. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've talked about like initial application. We had basically a two-step. So there was the initial application, literally what you just said. We get a spreadsheet from the forms. We didn't blank out the names, I don't think. We weren't that organized. we went through them, highlighted the ones, we shortlisted them. So we were doing a full day event of between 10 and 12 speakers. 10 and 12 speakers would be what we were aiming for. So we would shortlist that to, I think, 20, maybe 25. And so that was stage one. We'd go through typically 250 applications, getting down to 25, right? Then the 25 would get an email basically that said, right, we need you to send in a 2-minute video. 2-minute video.
Very common.
And in that video, we want you to answer the 3 questions. Pretty much the 3 questions you mentioned before. It was, what is your topic? Why is now the time for this topic? Why is this topic relevant now? And why are you the person that should be on stage talking about this topic? And that was important for us. We could see the person, we could see how articulate they were. We could see, because we had specific questions and specific criteria, a 2-minute video, we could see if they were following instructions. Because one of my key things was, I want people I think is coachable, because we had a very strong coaching program. And we'd had some concerns early on with people going, I'm just going to do my own thing. I don't need the coaching. And they stood out and not the
Mm-hmm.
best way on the
Mm-hmm.
day when that happens. So yeah, that's what, so that coachability was a big thing for us. Now, that may not be a big thing for other TEDx events. And
Oh,
some TEDx
usually it is.
events have virtually no coaching. I've gone
Mm.
to some that have, we do two workshops type thing or something, an early workshop and a later workshop, and that's it. Whereas we had a lot of one-on-one, 4 workshops that we went through milestones and all that for 60 to 90 days leading up to the event. And that's what I still run today with TEDx University of Waikato. Um, so I've waffled on. But my question is, what were the stages, if any, that you dealt with when you were doing selections?
It can differ from event to event. Some of them only want a paper application and then they'll call you up for an interview and they'll just ask you, and that's what New Brunswick did when I applied the first time. TEDx Ottawa and Canada, we would do the shortlist. We'd have the selection committee do the shortlist, and then we would send an email saying, we want a video no more than 2 minutes, with you expanding. We already knew their topic and who they were. That's how they got chosen. We wanted them to show us something in the video that they hadn't said on paper, but in a way
Good
that
point.
made us be able to see how they would be on stage. And I've always said to people, you can have a really great idea and not be a super strong speaker, and we'll still select you if you look like you're coachable. Because we didn't want people to think they had to be the smooth, calm, professional speaker, but we wanted to see that they had some ability. I liken it to, I tried online dating for a while. And I'd meet these wonderful men that were sending me beautiful emails, lots of articulate writing and whatnot. And then I'd say, let's meet for coffee. And we'd meet in a coffee shop and they couldn't put 2 sentences together. Or they would ramble on and on and on. And I just thought, yeah, I thought you were articulate and intelligent in writing. But when you stood in front of me to speak and communicate and just have a conversation, did someone else write the emails? So
Yep. Yep.
you got to make sure that the what's on the paper matches the person that's showing up, and that's what videos are really good for. So
Yep.
our advice was always we'd have a question or so, or we'd have them. And when I'm coaching people for video application, it's all about story. Can you
I
tell
see.
me a short story, under a minute or whatever, that will illustrate everything else we're looking for that isn't in your written application? And it gives the selection committee another angle to qualify that person or disqualify them. We
Yeah,
also
that
had,
that always stood out. If somebody
yeah,
used a story, because we
absolutely.
didn't ask them to on purpose, but if they did, it was yes, we've got
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Sorry,
The other
Karen.
thing is, we had live auditions for 2 of the big events in Ottawa, and that's how I lost out for one application. So they would shortlist, and then the shortlist people had 5 minutes in front of a live audience that was there specifically to help choose the speakers for the final stage 2, 3 months down the line. So you had your idea, you had,
Oh, that sounds brutal.
it was. And what I did at that point is I hadn't figured a soft entry angle for talking about, can we live better by talking about dying? And so my story on that stage was
Confronting.
too emotional for the audience. And so it didn't mean that it wasn't real, and it didn't mean that some of it didn't end up in the final TEDx, but it did not get through that audition. Apparently I was right on the mark. I think, and I still tease them about this because the principal director for that one, she phoned me and she said, Teri, I have to tell you, you didn't make the final cut. And I was devastated. She said it was a really good audition. We know you know what you're doing, and the overall votes, you were like 1 vote away from whatever, which hurt even more. And then
Yeah.
she said, oh, by the way, do you think you'll still be able to coach for us this year? Like, as one of their volunteers. And I know her really well. She's a really good friend. And I said, oh, so, and this is the cheeky Liverpudlian popping up, saying, oh, so I'm not good enough to be one of your speakers, but you want me to coach them? I ended
Yeah.
up coaching 5 out of 9 speakers that year. It was a ton of work. And I couldn't have coached if I was speaking because it would just have been too much. But yeah, so that was my kind of cheeky postlude to the Ottawa team. But yeah,
Yeah, because
it's
I was an
tough. Those 5 minute.
organizer. Yeah, because I was an organizer at TEDx Ruakura, I wasn't allowed to apply as a speaker at TEDx Ruakura. I could have applied at other TEDx's, but I'll be honest, because I was living and breathing it so much for those years that I did want to do a TEDx talk, but I just didn't have time.
I
and,
know.
and
And
so
then, yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I never did. So that's a shame. But
Well, I asked their permission to apply before I did. I said, if I do this, is it going to be okay? I want to do this. I want a larger audience. And then COVID hit not long after, right? So that was my escape hatch from the very heavy work of doing 2 TEDx events a year, 6 months with one group and then 6 months with the other. And you're doing 20, 30, if not more hours per speaker that I was assigned. It was a lot of work and not getting paid for any of that.
yeah,
So that's when the business coach took me aside and said, "You need to change your model." And she said, you know what you're doing. You've got this, then this, and this. She said, set yourself up. And she said, and by the way, the one part of TEDx that's not covered much is the application process. So it's thanks to her that it's hard work. It's an
yeah.
uphill battle sometimes. And I tell people I can't guarantee I'll get them on a stage, but I work with them as much as I can until we do. I can't work indefinitely. But if people are doing the work and they're stepping up and they're showing me good ideas and they're asking and they're actively engaged in the coaching process, I'll do anything for them,
I,
legally.
I have to say that's one of my favorite things is narrowing down and finding that idea, hunting for gold.
Yeah.
And I've got so many stories of people. I mean, it didn't often happen, but it did happen sometimes where we actually, I suppose it did happen a fair bit. We selected people because they had something there, but it wasn't well refined.
Hmm.
And I remember talking to Curtis, and I think I've written about this in a post in the community, but Curtis was brilliant, had an amazing radio voice. When in every rehearsal, all the women and some of the guys were like, oh, you should be a breakfast radio host. He had a really beautiful voice. But he did Māori studies, Indigenous studies, and he wanted to talk. He goes, this was our first meeting after he got selected, and we're doing everything one-on-one. We weren't doing workshops at that stage. It was still early days in the program, developing the program. And one-on-one, we're sitting down, having a coffee and talking through his ideas. And he goes, I've actually got 2 ideas and I don't know which one to do. I've got Indigenous knowledge has value, but I've been doing this documentary thing on Te Kuti, who was a Māori chief. And he got, this is back in the wars, New Zealand wars, the Māori wars, and him and his entire village, the women, children, everybody, was taken off to Chatham Islands, 200 kilometres away, and dumped there as a penal colony because they were rebels. And they survived there, which was no mean feat because it's just a penal island. Then they took and it was brutal. There was all sorts of deprivations you hear with colonialism. They took over a ship called the Rifleman without any blood loss. They took it over and they sailed back to New Zealand and they got back to their place. And it was a great story. And he says, so I'm conflicted between these two. And in that one session, we worked out how they can put the two together and do the whole thing. And it's still one of my favorite talks that we've put through. And but that's just one example. And the reason I wanted to mention that is don't let the fact you don't have the perfect idea stop you from starting the journey, because often you don't get the idea until through the coaching. It changes. It will change as you go through. So don't try and wait for perfect and then start, because it never happens. Yeah.
And we've had people get their yes in Ottawa and Canada, and then as they start the coaching to amplify the idea they submitted, and we find, oh, yeah, I thought it was this idea, but it's actually this. Sometimes I've had to go back to the selection committee and say, the more I work with the speaker, we're realizing that the talk is going to look like this. Is that okay? Because
Yep.
it's changed a bit from what they gave the yes to, but by then they trust the coaching process, they trust the speaker, and they know that I'm going to do everything I can to get the right talk out of the person for when they step onto that stage. But yeah, that happens. One of the coaches I worked with years ago said, sometimes you have to trust that the idea that you think leads to the idea. And that's that process of discovery.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic process. I mean,
Oh,
I
I love
love
it.
it.
Yeah.
Love it
Yeah,
when
we're
those.
such TED nerds, you and me. This is why
Absolutely, absolutely. So
we
yeah,
connect.
okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what you do for people in terms of this. I mean, you've covered it, but we'll put a link below on how people can get hold of you if they want some help with the applications in
Yeah.
particular. Obviously, Teri also does the coaching. So if anybody is in this community and they don't want to be coached by me for whatever reason, which happens, they can get hold of Teri and do the coaching with Teri. So what would you like people to know about you and your process and what you do?
So the most information about my process and what I do is on my website under the TEDx application tab under coaching. I don't know if you can share that.
I'll
And
link that
oh,
directly to
okay. I was
that
just
thing
because a
below.
quick
Yeah.
visual sometimes help. But the steps are there, the phases are there, everything I go through, and it is to find the idea that is going to work in an application, and then to actually go through the template of different applications. I love it when we can find one close by. Adults need a concrete goal, and so for people to say, "Oh, I want to do a TEDx someday," it's too open-ended and they'll never find the time to really sit down and do the work. But if I can say, like there's someone I was speaking to last week, there's an event that the application closes on April 26th. Like that's 10 days away. So I don't have a lot of time with him to get the idea down, get everything ready, get the application video because they want a video. I look through the different application forms, look for what that event is specifically asking for, and then build an application that matches that event. But at the same time, I'm coaching people through the process of understanding what goes into it, what needs to be said, what you should not say, which is really important, and how to do the video that matches, should that be in the first stage. They do all of that, and then it's replicable,
Yeah.
replicable.
Rick.
Yeah, they can repeat it. Because
Yep.
I want them to be able to learn enough in the process of being coached for application with me to be able to look at other events. If the first two we look at say no, for example, but they keep an eye out and I show them where to keep an eye out, and also ask them to look in their own radius, get on the emails for the different events that are close to them, show up on their Facebook pages, show up on the, like, be part of the community that
Yeah.
event
Be
is
in that
taking
community. That's
place in.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
they understand.
if you live one place and you visit another place, like for example, your parents
Mhm.
live somewhere else and you go there frequently, find out
Yeah,
about that one, because
yeah,
that means you could apply there, you can stay with your parents, your friends, or wherever it is you stay
absolutely.
in that place. And that's another, it's not exactly local, but it's sort of local because that's a place you go to often. So yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely do
So
that.
that's kind of what I do is go through that whole everything they need to put at least one, two, three applications in that feel good, and then they understand more how to do it. And I never leave a client hanging. I'm going to, if they're with me and we've finished the contract and the time we've agreed on together is over, but then an event comes up and they say, "Hey, will this work for this?" I'll answer a couple of questions like that. But I don't let people abuse my good nature either.
Yeah.
There's a way of getting, one-off hours. I also review It's not on the website, but I do evaluate past applications, kind of like you said earlier, so I can help them understand what they didn't do right. I don't want to
Yep.
say what they did wrong, but what didn't click. It's
Yep.
obviously something really simple, but if they don't understand that wonderful world of TED, they won't know what they don't know.
And that's one of the things you and I bring to, well, I mean, I shouldn't say you and I as if we're the only people in the world, but people like us bring to it is that the TED audience is a specific audience,
Yes.
And so, again, if you're talking to somebody who coaches a lot of people for conferences, it's a different thing. The TED audience is very, very specific,
Yeah.
and they're a smart audience. They want to, but they're a discerning audience. You can't just say them, the sky is red, and expect them to believe it. They want proof. They want to go, yeah, how is that? But they also want a story. They also want that that entertainment built into your talk. So you've got to, there's a very specific thing. It's hard to articulate, but there's a specific thing that you need to do in order to really get that. And the idea is the essence of it, but it's so much more than that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And by the way, if you're up there saying the sky is red, then the TEDx YouTube channel won't put that talk up unless you can actually scientifically evidence-based proof that the sky is red. They'll call it pseudoscience or, woo-woo cracker. I can't speak to it. Quackery.
Quackery.
And it won't make it. And then you've done all that work and the committee, the mounting committee or whatever you want to call them, the ones that post the stuff online can simply say this isn't going to make it. For me as a TEDx coach, when I was working, that would have broken my heart. For a speaker I'd
That
worked
happened with me
not get
once.
it. Oh, it's
One of my
horrible.
speakers didn't get selected. They were denied have their video put up, and I was gutted. And and I'm going to share the story actually because it is a really good, important thing. Because there are some would-be speakers that TED is just not the right thing for. Okay.
Absolutely.
So if all you want to do is promote your business, this isn't what you want to do. There are easier ways to promote your business.
Yep.
If you're in that spiritual realm, this is not the place for that. And if you're talking a religious thing, unless it's academic, you don't want to go there really either. And similar in a political thing. If it's not academically about politics, then, if it's a partisan sort of view on politics, it's out. So all of those will get denied. Now, they'll probably get denied at the application level.
They should, yeah.
They should.
Absolutely.
We had one guy, Andre, he wanted to talk about the gut biome. And I learned a lot through coaching him through this. Now, he had a company that started out doing these gut biome supplements for livestock, for specific stuff. So it was sheep and cows and things like that for farm animals. And they had started doing something similar for people. And he owned the company and he had a scientific advisory board and all the rest of it. So I did warn him. I said, right, so we've got to, this is not a pitch fest for your company. We can't do that. But we did feel it was important to disclose that he was involved in that industry. And the way, the way he wanted to do it was make it very simple. So he told it almost like a kid's story. It was quite amusing, entertaining. But all the facts in it were reviewed by his scientific advisors, make sure he's not saying anything, but it's simplified. And it was a great talk. It went down really well on the day, got submitted, and TED denied the video. They said, no, we can't do it. And I was gutted for him. He was gutted as well, because a lot of work went in on that. And I did ask why, because they didn't give me a reason. And I wanted to know, was it the commercial aspect or was it the pseudoscience? Because those are the only things I could think it would be.
Right.
And they never gave me an answer, which is very unsatisfactory.
Of
But
course.
yeah, so
Um,
that's a word of caution.
mhm.
Do become familiar with the rules, because there is a line, and often you can, bypass that line. So, for example, Simon Sinek is one of the most popular TEDx talks of all time, or TED talks, I guess, of all time. But he
So
wasn't out there
TEDx to start.
he wasn't out there to promote his business. He had an
No,
idea and shared that idea, which I think was from his book, which was great. I'm sure it didn't do his business any harm,
no.
but you've got to focus on the idea and have that idea as a separate thing and not be, pitching
Yeah, promoting your
up there.
business or a book or a theory or yeah. So it's as you can tell, we've been speaking for almost an hour now. It's a complicated process, but with a good guide, which is what I try to be, it can make it easier. And I'm not saying it's going to be perfect or there won't be pitfalls along the way, but in general, if you're choosing someone to help you get a yes, and you can do it yourself. There's no, there's tons of videos now on YouTube channels on how
And
to
there's
get
a
land
book. There's a book.
talk and there's many books, but it's something I love doing and helping people get that yes. It's really exciting, and then it's up to them. As you said, some events have coaches, some people have a coaching relationship already, and I've learned to work alongside. If they get a yes with a big event and that event has their own coaches, sometimes I just hand them off, and sometimes they'll say, "Can we continue?" And I collaborate with
Yeah.
it's a professional relationship. I never say, "What do you mean they said do that?" It needs to be respectful and collaborative and fun.
Yeah.
Like I just want people to succeed by the time they're ready to step into that red dot. I want them bringing everything they have,
Yeah.
their idea and
Absolutely.
all the supporting evidence so they can feel successful.
And it is a big deal because you only get one shot at it. That video's taken once, you don't get a redo, you don't get a take two. So you want to make sure that you've got that honed, that message just ready, so that you're proud of what is on that video
Exactly.
for the next few years. Look, Teri, we could talk for hours. You know that.
We could.
We're both talkers, and it's great to see a fellow nerd around in this space. But we'll have to leave it there. We'll have some links below for the website, the book, and how people can get hold of you. Teri's joined the community, so feel free to message her in the community as well. And Teri, I welcome you to do a post or whatever, and anything you want around this space. That'd be cool. But yeah, I'll leave it there, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you. You go enjoy your day. You take care.
Okay.